Hello friends, if you want to watch super hit movie Shrek 2 in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel friends in today's video. The movie we are going to talk about is called Shrek 2. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch all the interesting facts about this movie in today's video. I am going to tell you, also going to give you all the information on which OT platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production filming, post-production budget box office collection of this film. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will also give you a small review of the story of this film. Apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film, storyline, star cast, actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end. So let's start the video. Shrek 2 is a 2004 American animated fantasy comedy film loosely based on the 1990 children's picture book Shrek by William Steig. Directed by Andrew Adamson, Kelly Asbury, and Conrad Vernon from a screenplay by Adamson, Joe Stillman, and the writing team of J. David Stem and David N. Weiss. It is the sequel to Shrek, 2001, and the second installment in the Shrek film series. The film stars Mike Myers, Eddie Murphy, and Cameron Diaz, who reprise their respective voice roles of Shrek, Donkey, and Princess Fiona. They are joined by new characters voiced by Antonio Banderas, Julie Andrews, John Cleese, Rupert Everett, and Jennifer Saunders. Shrek 2 takes place following the events of the first film, with Shrek and Donkey meeting Fiona's parents as the zealous fairy godmother, who wants Fiona to marry her son Prince Charming, and plots to destroy Shrek and Fiona's marriage. Shrek and Donkey team up with a sword-wielding cat named Puss in Boots to foil her plans. Development began in 2001, and following disagreements with producers, the first film's screenwriters Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio were replaced with Adamson. The story was inspired by Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, 1967, and new animation tools were utilized to improve the visual appearance of each character, particularly Puss in Boots. The lead actors also received a significant bump in salary to $10 million. Which at the time was among the highest contracts in their respective careers. Like its predecessor, Shrek 2 also parodies other films based on fairy tales and features references to American popular culture. The film is dedicated to the memory of Shrek creator William Steig, who died on October 3, 2003, 8 months before the film was released. Shrek 2 premiered at the 2004 Cannes Film Festival on May 15, 2004, where it competed for the Palme d'Or, and was released in theaters on May 19 by DreamWorks Pictures. Like its predecessor, it received positive reviews from critics, and is considered by many to be one of the best sequel films ever made. The film grossed $933.8 million worldwide, and scored the second-largest three-day opening weekend in United States history, and the largest opening for an animated film at the time of its release. It went on to become the highest-grossing film of 2004 and the fourth highest-grossing film overall at the time of its release. Shrek 2 is also DreamWorks Animation's highest-grossing film to date and the highest-grossing film released by DreamWorks Pictures, and it held the title of being the highest-grossing animated film of all time worldwide until Pixar Animation Studios' Toy Story 3 surpassed it in 2010. The film received 2 Academy Award nominations for Best Animated Feature and Best Original Song, and its associated soundtrack charted in the top 10 on the U.S. Billboard 200. 2 sequels, Shrek the Third, 2007, and Shrek Forever After, 2010, had soon followed, with an upcoming sequel, Shrek 5, scheduled to be released in December 2026. The film's character, Puss in Boots, has also received his own series of spin-off media, Puss in Boots 2011, The Adventures of Puss in Boots 2015-2018, and Puss in Boots The Last Wish 2022, following his debut. Voice cast. Main article, List of Shrek franchise characters. Mike Myers as Shrek. Eddie Murphy as Donkey. Cameron Diaz as Princess Fiona. Julie Andrews as Queen Lillian. Antonio Banderas as Puss in Boots. John Cleese as King Harold. Rupert Everett as Prince Charming. Jennifer Saunders as Fairy Godmother. Joan Rivers as Red Carpet Announcer. Kate Thornton provides the voice for the British version. Larry King as Doris the Ugly Stepsister. Jonathan Ross provides the voice for the British version. Aaron Warner as Big Bad Wolf. Cody Cameron as Pinocchio. The Three Little Pigs. Christopher Knights and Simon J. Smith as Three Blind Mice. Conrad Vernon as Gingy, Muffin Man. Mongo. Cedric, Announcer. Chris Miller as Magic Mirror. Mark Mosley as Dresser. Kelly Cooney-Salella as fast food clerk, Kelly Asbury as Page, elf, nobleman, nobleman's son, Andrew Adamson as captain of the guard. Cameos. Joan Rivers' cameo as herself marked the first time that a real person had been represented on screen by the Shrek animation team. Her part, though retaining her visual representation, was redubbed by presenter Kate Thornton for the United Kingdom release. Simon Cowell appears as himself on Far, Far Away Idol, a parody of American Idol, on the DVD special features and just before the credits on the American VHS edition. See Home Media. Production. In 2001, soon after the original Shrek proved to be a hit, Mike Myers, Eddie Murphy, and Cameron Diaz negotiated an upfront payment of $10 million each for voicing a sequel to the film. This pay increase represented a significant rise from the $350,000 salary that each of the three were paid for the first film. According to Jeffrey Katzenberg, the executive producer of Shrek 2 and a co-founder of DreamWorks Pictures, who led the negotiations, the payments were probably the highest in the actors' entire careers. Each of the actors were expected to work between 15 and 18 hours in total. The film was produced with a $70 million budget. Director Andrew Adamson returned to direct Shrek 2 after previously directing the first Shrek film. Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio, the screenwriters and co-producers of the first film, insisted that the sequel would be a traditional fairy tale, but after disagreements with the producers, they left the project and were replaced by Adamson. His writing for Shrek 2 was inspired by the 1967 comedy drama film Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and was completed with the help of the film's co-writers Joe Stillman, one of the other writers from the first film, and screenwriting duo J. David Stem and David N. Weiss, and co-directors Kelly Asbury and Conrad Vernon, the latter two of whom spent most of the film's production duration in Northern California, while Adamson spent most of his time with the film's voice actors in Glendale, California. DreamWorks began production of Shrek 2 in 2001 before the first Shrek film was completed. The studio added more human characters to the film than there were in its predecessor and improved character appearance and movement with the use of several new animation rendering systems. In particular, Puss in Boots necessitated development of a whole new set of film production tools to handle the appearance of his fur, belt, and hat plume. Puss's fur especially required an upgrade to the fur shader. All of the character setup was completed in the first 3 years of production. In an early version of Shrek 2, Shrek abdicated the throne and called for a fairy tale election. Pinocchio's campaign was an honesty campaign, while Gingy's was a smear campaign. Adamson said that although this plot did have many funny ideas, it was also too overtly satiric and political, and considered more intellectual than emotional. Shrek 2 also appears much darker in terms of lighting when compared to the original film. Designers reportedly took inspiration from 19th century French illustrator and engraver Gustave Doré to improve the film's richness of detail and setting. According to production designer Guillaume Aretos, there are a lot of medieval paintings and illustrations, and my own influences, which are classical paintings from the 15th and 16th centuries. The design of Shrek is always a twist on reality anyway, so we tried to pack as much detail and interest as we could in the imagery. Release. In April 2004, the film was selected to compete for the Palme d'Or at the 2004 Confers-sur-Surge Film Festival. My bride. Shrek 2 was originally scheduled for release on June 18, 2004. The film was then moved forward from June 18, 2004 to May 21, 2004. However, due to fan demand, it was moved up 2 days from May 21, 2004 to May 19, 2004. A day before the film went to theaters, the first 5 minutes were shown on Nickelodeon's You Pick Live. Playing in 4,163 theaters over its first weekend in the United States, Shrek 2 was the first film with over 4,000 theaters in overall count. Over 3,700 theaters was its count for an opening day. The film was theatrically re-released in the United States for 1 week beginning on April 12, 2024, in celebration of its 20th anniversary. Reception. Box office. The film opened at number 1 with a Friday to Sunday total of $108 million and $129 million since its Wednesday launch, from a then-record 4,163 theaters, for an average of $25,952 per theater over the weekend. At the time, Shrek 2's Friday to Sunday total was the second highest opening weekend, only trailing Spider-Man's $114.8 million. In addition, Saturday alone managed to obtain $44.8 million, making it the highest single-day gross at the time, beating Spider-Man's first Saturday gross of $43.6 million. The film remained at number 1 in its second weekend, expanding to 4,223 theaters and grossing another $95.6 million over the four-day Memorial Day weekend, narrowly beating out the $85.8 million four-day tally of New Opener, The Day After Tomorrow. It spent 10 weeks in the weekly top 10, remaining there until July 29th, and stayed in theaters for 149 days, roughly 21 weeks, closing on November 25, 2004. The film was released in the United Kingdom on July 2, 2004, and topped the country's box office for the next 2 weekends, before being dethroned by Spider-Man 2. The film grossed $439.8 million domestically, US and Canada, and $494 million in foreign markets for a total of $933.8 million worldwide, making it the highest-grossing film of both 2004 and in its franchise. This also puts the film at 14th on the all-time domestic box office list and 42nd on the worldwide box office list. The film sold an estimated 71,000 or 50,900 tickets in the US. The film also took away the highest worldwide gross made by an animated feature, which was before held by Finding Nemo, 2003, although the latter still had a higher overseas-only gross. With DVD sales and Shrek 2 merchandise estimated to total almost $800 million, the film, which was produced with a budget of $150 million, is DreamWorks' most profitable film to date. Shrek 2 remained the highest-grossing animated film worldwide until the release of Toy Story 3, 2010, and held the record for the highest-grossing animated film at the North American box office until the release of Finding Dory, 2016, as well as the highest-grossing non-Disney animated film at this box office until the release of the Super Mario Bros. Movie in 2023. It also remained the highest-grossing non-Disney animated film worldwide until it was surpassed by Despicable Me 2 in 2013. DreamWorks Pictures presents an animated film directed by Andrew Adamson, Kelly Asbury, and Conrad Vernon, written by J. David Stem, Joe Stillman, and David N. Weiss, based on the characters by William Steig. Running time, 105 minutes. Rated PG for some crude humor, brief substance reference, and some suggestive content. Shrek 2 is bright, lively, and entertaining, but it's no Shrek. Maybe it's too much to expect lightning to strike twice. Shrek was so original in its animation and such an outpouring of creative imagination that it blindsided us. Shrek 2 is wonderful in its own way, but more earthbound. It's more fun to see Shrek slay a dragon than to watch him meeting his new in-laws. Shrek, voice again by Mike Myers, actually seems teetering on the brink of middle-class respectability in the sequel. There's nothing like a good woman to tame an ogre. His outsider status as the loner in the swamp has changed dramatically through his romance with Princess Fiona, Cameron Diaz, although his table manners could stand improvement when he has dinner with her parents, King Harold, John Cleese, and Queen Lillian, Julie Andrews. In the first film, as you may remember, Fiona's curse was that she had been taken captive by a dragon, but could be freed if the dragon was slain and she was kissed by the hero who did the deed. Ideally, that would have been Prince Charming, Rupert Everett. But in Shrek 2, when he finally arrives in the neighborhood, he discovers to his intense disappointment that the ogre has already slain the dragon and wed the princess, and that Shrek's kiss dramatically transformed Fiona. No longer petite, she is tall and broad and green, and an ogre. A summons comes from the kingdom of far, far away. Fiona's parents want to meet her new husband. This involves a very long journey by Shrek, Fiona, and Donkey, Eddie Murphy, who insists on coming along. Donkey is the comic high point of the movie, with Murphy's nonstop riffs and inability to guess when he is not welcome. The trick isn't that he talks, Shrek observed in the first movie. The trick is to get him to shut up. The kingdom is indeed far, far away, which gives Donkey endless opportunities to ask, "Are we there yet?" Their arrival at the castle of Fiona's parents provides big laughs. Harold and Lillian are shocked to find that their daughter has not only married an ogre, but become one. A basket of doves is released to celebrate their arrival, and one of them is so astonished, it flies bang into the castle wall and drops dead at Harold's feet. A summons comes from the kingdom of far, far away. Fiona's parents want to meet her new husband. This involves a very long journey by Shrek, Fiona, and Donkey, Eddie Murphy, who insists on coming along. Donkey is the comic high point of the movie, with Murphy's non-stop riffs and inability to guess when he is not welcome. "The trick isn't that he talks," Shrek observed in the first movie. "The trick is to get him to shut up." The kingdom is indeed far, far away, which gives Donkey endless opportunities to ask, "Are we there yet?" Their arrival at the castle of Fiona's parents provides big laughs. Harold and Lillian are shocked to find that their daughter has not only married an ogre, but become one. A basket of doves is released to celebrate their arrival, and one of them is so astonished it flies bang into the castle wall and drops dead at Harold's feet. Eventually, the plot leads us into the environs of the fairy godmother, Jennifer Saunders, a sinister figure who operates a vast factory manufacturing potions and hexes. Is it possible that her happily ever after potion could transform ogres into humans? Not if she can help it. She wants to get rid of Shrek and marry Fiona to Prince Charming, according to her original plan. The screenplay, by J. David Stem, Joe Stillman, and David N. Weiss, has the same fun that Shrek did in playing against our expectations. Who would anticipate a fight between the ogre and his bride, with Shrek marching out of the house? What about the arrivals ceremony at the matrimonial ball, with all of the kingdom's celebrities walking down a red carpet while an unmistakable clone of Joan Rivers does the commentary? And there's real sweetness when Shrek and Fiona start smooching. The movie has several songs, none of which I found very memorable, although of course I am the same person who said the Simon and Garfunkel songs in The Graduate were instantly forgettable. The first song, Accidentally in Love, explains how Shrek and Fiona fell for each other. It's cut like a music video, which is okay, but I think it comes too early in the film, before we really feel at home with the narrative. A few minor characters from the first film, like the gingerbread man and the three blind mice, return for the sequel, and there's a new major character, Puss in Boots, a cat who seems to have been raised on Charles Boyer movies and is voiced by Antonio Banderas. Donkey and Puss build an enormous mutual resentment because each one thinks he's the star. Sequels have their work cut out for them. Some people think Godfather Part 2 is better than The Godfather, but the first film loomed so tall in my mind that I gave Part 2 only 3 stars. In the same way, perhaps I would have liked Shrek 2 more if the first film had never existed. But I'll never know. Still, Shrek 2 is a jolly story, and Shrek himself seems durable enough to inspire Shrek 3 with no trouble at all. Maybe it will be Shrek meets cheaper by the dozen. Well, you know how you look forward to a sequel to a really great movie while at the same time dreading it? You can rest easy. Shrek 2 was great, with a few caveats for parents. You'll be laughing from the first 5 minutes. The best thing a sequel can do is to take the same characters and go in a different direction. Take the story from the original film, change it only slightly, and you've got a recipe for boredom. For an example, look at the Lethal Weapon movies. First one was great, for what it was. Second one wasn't bad, but then the series became formulaic. Hey, it worked once, didn't it? And went down the tubes. In the original Shrek, DreamWorks took aim at the classic Disney stories and characters with broad strokes, poking good-spirited fun at them. Been there, done that. It's funny once, but if it was repeated here in the same way, it would have gotten old fast. In Shrek 2, they've pulled in references to other well-known films with a nudge and a wink, and it's great for bringing either just a grin to your face or a hearty laugh out of you. Some of the memorable characters from the first film are back. Pinocchio, the wolf in grandmother's clothing, the gingerbread man, and the three blind mice. Although they were funny, some of the jokes involving these guys bothered me a bit. More on that later. Here we also learn that even fairy godmothers don't give you something for nothing, and that there is a price to be paid for their good favors. I don't want to give too much away, but the relationships in this story were inspired. The CGI is incredible. I found myself pulled out of the movie at times, not due to poor animation, but because it was so fantastic. The detail and subtlety in the faces of the characters was such that it was almost eerie. Perhaps the animators went a bit too close to realism in the renderings. Okay, here are my issues with this. A PG film. Why is it necessary to have sexual humor in a film of this type? It still would have been funny without this sort of thing. Every time one of these bits came up, it could have been replaced with something else. There were references to being sexy, tight touches, a character being gender confused, and one male character wearing women's thong underwear. While I really liked the film overall, these bits took away from my enjoyment of the film. The dinner scene with Shrek, Fiona, and her parents was storyboarded and reworked repeatedly to perfect the rhythm of overlapping arguments and reaction shots. Similarly, the holding out for a hero climax was almost like a music video with beats from the song tied to specific animation cues months before animation began. Color scripts, panel-like paintings mapping the mood and palette of each scene were created to ensure tonal consistency. Far away sequences were mapped in bright, warm tones while the swamp retained its cool, earthy color scheme. This color contrast became a subtle storytelling device to visually signal where Shrek felt out of place versus where he felt at home. Technical previsualization, given the planned complexity of crowd scenes, transformation sequences, and large-scale visual effects like the giant gingerbread man attack. The technical team began early previsualization work. This involved low-resolution digital mock-ups of scenes to test camera angles, lighting setups, and timing. These tests allowed the directors to experiment with comedic framing like Donkey's exaggerated close-ups before committing to final renders. Music integration planning from the outset. Music was part of the pre-production discussion. The team didn't want to simply insert songs after animation. Instead, they wanted sequences like holding out for a hero to be animated around the music. This meant working with the music department early to select tracks, lock tempos, and synchronize action beats to audio cues. The pre-production philosophy. Every decision during pre-production came back to one guiding principle. Shrek 2 should feel both bigger and more personal than its predecessor. Bigger in scope, setting, and spectacle, but more personal in the way it explores relationship, self-worth, and acceptance. By the time pre-production ended, the blueprint for Shrek 2 wasn't just a continuation of Shrek's story. It was an expansion of his world, a satire of celebrity culture, and a celebration of love in all its messy, imperfect forms. This careful groundwork is why when Shrek 2 hit theaters, it didn't just succeed commercially. It became one of the rare sequels that many fans and critics consider even better than the original. Every gag, every character beat, and every technical flourish was the product of a meticulously crafted pre-production process that refused to settle for good enough. Filming, bringing Shrek 2 to life in the world of animation. Filming is a different beast than in live action, but it's no less demanding. For Shrek 2, the process was a marathon of creativity, precision, and collaboration across multiple departments: voice acting, animation, blocking, camera choreography, lighting, and visual effects, each working in tandem to turn a stack of storyboards into a living, breathing film. From the first microphone check to the final animation render, the production phase was a carefully orchestrated dance lasting nearly 2 years, voice recording laying the emotional foundation. The first step in Shrek 2's filming process began in the sound booth. Unlike live-action films where visuals lead performance, here the voices came first. The returning cast, Mike Myers, Shrek, Eddie Murphy, Donkey, and Cameron Diaz, Fiona, were recorded months before animators began their work, allowing animators to sync lip movements, facial expressions, and body language to the performances. Directors Andrew Adamson, Kelly Asbury, and Conrad Vernon encouraged improvisation during recording sessions. Eddie Murphy's Donkey benefited most from this freedom. Many of his rapid-fire jokes were improvised, and animators later extended certain shots to fit his unexpected delivery. Mike Myers, continuing Shrek's signature Scottish accent, leaned into subtler line readings this time, which animators translated into more nuanced expressions and smaller gestures. Shrek's raised eyebrow or reluctant smirk became key visual beats. Jennifer Saunders recorded much of her fairy godmother performance, standing and gesturing dramatically, so her physicality informed her character's sweeping arm movements and flamboyant posture. Antonio Banderas, voicing Puss in Boots, alternated between suave, deep delivery and exaggerated, cute kitten voice in a single take. Animators mirrored this by giving Puss sudden, comically jarring shifts in facial expression, animation blocking, and character acting. Once the voice tracks were locked, animation blocking began. This stage is the rough, low-detail staging of each scene, focusing on character positions, timing, and camera moves. Animators treated the characters as actors on a digital set, finding the most expressive body language to match the recorded dialogue. Physical comedy was carefully rehearsed in this digital blocking phase. For instance, in the dinner scene where Shrek and King Harold argue, animators blocked exaggerated utensil gestures, table slams, and awkward silences to hit comedic beats. Animators also studied live-action reference footage, some recorded by themselves, acting out scenes to ensure believable weight, timing, and comedic rhythm, cinematography, and animation. Digital cameras with live-action thinking, though the world of Shrek 2 was built inside computers. The camera work was approached as if it were a live-action set. Virtual cameras could pan, dolly, and crane smoothly, but the directors often chose framing and angles that mimicked live cinematography for a more cinematic feel. Farway's sweeping establishing shots were designed to feel like grand aerial helicopter passes, complete with slight camera drift to suggest human-operated equipment. In contrast, action scenes, like Mongo's march toward the castle, used low angles and forward tracking shots to emphasize his size and momentum. These camera decisions made Shrek 2 feel less like a cartoon and more like a big-budget spectacle. Performance animation translating emotion into pixels. DreamWorks animators pushed character acting further than in the first film. Thanks to advancements in facial rigging, characters could display subtle micro-expressions. Fiona's eyes could flicker with doubt, Shrek's mouth could hesitate before a confession, and Donkey's ears could twitch nervously. In emotionally heavy moments, such as Shrek overhearing Fiona with charming animators used minimal movement. Shrek's shoulders slump, his eyelids lower, allowing the audience to focus on the voice, performance, and the weight of the scene. In comedic beats, movement became broad and snappy, such as Puss's exaggerated sword flourishes or Donkey's high-energy hops. Set and environmental animation filming wasn't just about characters. Far Away was essentially another character in the film, and its creation required extensive environmental animation. Streets bustled with fairy tale citizens, each animated with unique gaits, gestures, and interactions, even if they were in the background. This was made possible by crowd simulation software, but animators still hand-tweaked certain extras to add sight gags, a hallmark of the Shrek style. Large-scale sequences like the transformation potion, Storm, and the final castle siege involved complex environmental effects, swirling clouds, magical light bursts, splashing water, collapsing stone, and debris scattering in real time. Action set pieces, pre-visualization to final render. The holding out for a hero rescue sequence is a prime example of Shrek 2's ambitious animation filming. The scene was pre-visualized months in advance with music tempo dictating camera cuts and action beats. Animators treated the giant gingerbread man as a massive physical prop. His weight was conveyed through slower, heavy steps, while water interaction required advanced splash simulation. In the same sequence, Donkey's frantic ride matched the music's rhythm and the scene's intercut tension, lighting and rendering the cinematic polish once animation was approved. Lighting artists staged every scene with digital lights simulating sunlight, candlelight, or magical glow, as needed. Farway's sunlit streets glowed with warm tones, while Shrek Swamp retained its cooler natural hues. For contrast, rendering was the last step in filming, turning all that animation, lighting, and texture work into final images. Some shots took up to 40 hours of processing per frame due to complex effects like reflective surfaces, particle systems, and high-resolution textures, set atmosphere, and production. While animation isn't filmed on physical sets, the production atmosphere mirrored live-action filmmaking in one key way: collaboration. Directors, animators, sound designers, and effects artists constantly reviewed shots together, refining details and iterative passes. Changes could be as small as adjusting the timing of a blink or as large as reblocking an entire scene for better comedic payoff. By the end of production, Shrek 2 had been filmed through a marriage of vocal performance, digital acting, camera craftsmanship, and environmental worldviewing. This phase wasn't just about bringing the script to life. It was about infusing every frame with the same charm, energy, and layered humor that defined the Shrek universe, ensuring that the sequel didn't just match the first film's magic, but expanded it into something even grander. Post-production, the final magic touch of Shrek 2. Once the animation, voice performances, and effects work were in place, Shrek 2 entered its post-production phase, the stage where hundreds of individual creative threads were woven into a seamless final product. This was the moment where timing, polish, and emotional beats were refined, and where the technical mastery of DreamWorks animation truly became invisible to the audience. In animated filmmaking, post-production is not just cleanup. It's the invisible artistry that determines whether a film feels alive or mechanical. Editing, sculpting, the rhythm. The editorial process for Shrek 2 was about more than simply stitching together finished shots. Editors worked alongside the directors to fine-tune pacing for both comedic and emotional impact. Early rough cuts were assembled, using storyboards and temporary voice recordings, often called scratch tracks, long before final animation was complete. This allowed the team to experiment with timing, rearrange dialogue beats, and even insert new jokes while scenes were still in development. For comedy, milliseconds mattered. A single pause before donkeys delivers a punchline could make the difference between a chuckle and a full laugh. In action sequences, cuts were carefully timed to music beats, particularly in the holding out for a hero castle siege, where each visual beat needed to sync perfectly with Jennifer Sayer's vocals. The editors also maintained visual clarity and fast-moving sequences, ensuring that the audience could follow multiple simultaneous action threads without losing track of the story. Visual effects compositing, layering the impossible. Although Shrek 2 was entirely animated, it still relied heavily on visual effects compositing. Each final shot was built from dozens of layers, characters, background, environments, particle effects, lighting passes, and shadows, all composited together to create a unified image. Complex sequences like the transformation potion scene required meticulous blending of practical feeling, effects with stylized animation. The swirling magical aura around Shrek and Donkey involved multiple particle systems, one for sparkles, another for mist, another for glowing light flares. Each was rendered separately, then composited with depth of field effects to create a sense of space and immersion. Similarly, the giant Gingerbread Man's rampage required integration of water simulation splashes, falling debris, and dust clouds, all interacting in a physically believable way while still maintaining the exaggerated style of the film. Sound design, building a sonic world in post-production. Skywalker Sound's team layered audio textures to fully realize the world of Far, Far Away. Every sound armor clanking, fabric swishing. The echo of castle halls was individually designed and placed in the mix. Magical effects were given unique sound signatures, the fairy godmother's spells, combined chiming tones with airy whoos, while Puss in Boots' sword strikes had sharp metallic ringtones designed to match his swashbuckling flair. Donkey's transformation into a stallion required a playful sound blend, horse hooves, mixed with an almost comedic poof of magic, underscoring the moment's absurdity. Ambient noise also played a key role. Far, far away streets carried distant chatter, carriage wheels, and faint marketplace sounds, while the swamp featured croaking frogs, buzzing insects, and rippling water, grounding each location in a believable soundscape, music integration, and final mix. One of Shrek 2's greatest post-production achievements was the flawless blending of Harry Gregson Williams' orchestral score with its pop soundtrack. Final mixing sessions involved balancing music with dialogue and sound effects so that no element overpowered the others. For example, during Change's Butterfly Boucher feat, David Bowie the mix ensures that Shrek and Donkey's comedic reactions remain audible while the song's emotional undertone stays intact. The holding out for a hero sequence was even more demanding. Editors and sound mixers meticulously aligned Saunders's vocal performance with visual action beats, while also integrating environmental sounds like thunder, galloping hooves, and magical explosions without drowning out the song. Color grading and visual tone control, even in animation post-production, includes color grading, adjusting brightness, saturation, and contrast to unify the film's look. The grading process in Shrek 2 helped maintain the stark visual contrast between the warm, glowing world of Far, Far Away and the cooler, earthier tones of Shrek's Swamp. Action scenes received slight boosts in contrast and saturation to heighten energy, while emotional moments often softened the palette to focus attention on characters' expressions. These subtle adjustments reinforced narrative tone without calling attention to themselves. Test screenings and final tweaks before locking the final cut. DreamWorks held multiple test screenings with both adult and child audiences. The goal was to evaluate pacing, joke clarity, and emotional resonance. Feedback sometimes led to surprising changes, minor edits to dialogue, retiming of visual gags, and even small animation adjustments to improve readability. One reported example was the dinner scene. Early versions had longer stretches of dialogue, but feedback suggested tighter pacing would increase comedic impact. Post-production edits trimmed excess beats while sharpening the escalating tension between Shrek and King Harold. Final rendering, the last hurdle. Every finalized shot had to be fully rendered at high resolution. Some of the most complex shots, such as wide-scale crowd scenes or heavy particle effects, took up to 40 hours per frame to render on DreamWorks render farms. This stage required careful scheduling to ensure that no last-minute changes delayed delivery. By the time post-P-production wrapped, Shrek 2 had transformed from a collection of raw assets into a cohesive, polished cinematic experience. Editing refined the comedy and pacing. Sound design gave the world texture. Music cemented emotional beats, and visual effects brought spectacle to life. The invisible artistry of post-P production is what allowed Shrek 2 to feel effortless, making every laugh, gasp, and heartfelt moment land exactly as intended. Budget and box office collection. The financial story of Shrek 2 behind Shrek 2's witty humor, groundbreaking animation, and rich emotional storytelling lies a financial success story that remains one of the most remarkable in animation history. The film wasn't just a hit. It was a box office juggernaut that shattered records, redefined DreamWorks' place in the industry, and proved that animated sequels could compete head-to-head with live action. Blockbusters in global revenue. Production budget. Building an animated giant Shrek 2 carried an estimated production budget of around $150 million, which was substantial even by early 2000s animated standards. This budget reflected the technological leaps made since the first Shreks. More complex animation rigs, higher resolution rendering, improved lighting systems, and richer textures all demanded more computing power, more artist hours, and more specialized talent. The voice cast also commanded higher salaries this time. Mike Myers, Eddie Murphy, and Cameron Diaz, fresh off the massive success of the first film, secured lucrative contracts, while newcomers like Antonio Banderas and Jennifer Saunders were brought in as high-profile additions to the ensemble. Musical rights for major pop hits such as Holding Out for a Hero and Changes further elevated the cost, as licensing recognizable songs for global theatrical and home releases was no small expense. On marketing expenses, while separate from the production budget, reportedly reached $120 million worldwide. DreamWorks partnered with countless brands for promotional tie-ins, fast food chains, toy lines, cereal brands, and even cosmetics companies, ensuring Shrek 2's characters were everywhere in the months leading up to release. Release strategy. A royal rollout. Shrek 2 was released in May 2004, perfectly positioned at the start of the summer blockbuster season. DreamWorks deliberately avoided the December slot, used by some animated competitors, choosing instead to compete directly with live-action tentpoles. This gamble paid off as the film's appeal stretched across demographics: children for the fairy tale antics, adults for the sharp satire and layered humor. The release was global and aggressive. DreamWorks ensured near-simultaneous openings in major territories to maximize momentum and reduce piracy risks. The marketing leaned heavily on Puss in Boots' introduction, capitalizing on Antonio Banderas' international popularity and on the fairy godmother's musical set pieces, which gave the campaign a lively, high-energy tone. All domestic box office, The Ogre Rules the Kingdom. In the United States and Canada, Shrek 2 debuted with a $18 million openings weekend, an enormous figure for the time, especially for an animated sequel. It set the record for the biggest opening weekend for an animated film in history, a record it held until Shrek the Third and later Finding Dory. The film's legs were extraordinary. It stayed in the top 5 at the box office for over 2 months, driven by repeat family viewings and strong word of mouth. Its domestic total eventually reached $441 million, making it the highest-grossing film of 2004 in North America, beating heavyweights like Spider-Man 2 and Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. International box office, conquering far, far away and beyond internationally. Shrek 2 was just as dominant. It grossed over $494 million outside the U.S., with especially strong performances in the United Kingdom, Germany, France, and Japan. DreamWorks tailored marketing campaigns for each market. Some territories emphasized the fairy tale parody, while others leaned on the film's romance and star voice cast. In the UK, where Shrek already had a strong fan base, the sequel became a cultural event boosted by the British casting of Julie Andrews and John Cleese. In Spain and Latin America, Antonio Banderas' presence as Puss in Boots was heavily marketed, resulting in disproportionately high box office returns in Spanish-speaking territories. Total worldwide gross, a record-breaking crown. By the end of its run, Shrek 2 had amassed a staggering $35 million worldwide, making it the highest-grossing film of 2004 globally, the highest-grossing animated film in history at the time until Toy Story 3 in 2010, the first animated film to cross a $900 million without 3D ticket search charges or IMAX boosts. Its profit margins were enormous, especially given the massive merchandising revenue that extended far beyond the box office. Merchandising and ancillary revenue. The Ogre's second gold mine merchandise sales for Shrek 2 were colossal. Toys, apparel, home video sales, and video games based on the film contributed hundreds of millions in additional revenue. The home video release was one of the fastest-selling DVDs in history, with over 12 million units sold in its first week. Promotional tie-ins created a cultural saturation effect. Puss in Boots, plush toys, fairy godmother, dolls, donkey voice-activated figures, and even branded food products kept Shrek 2 visible long after it left theaters. Financial legacy, changing the sequel game. The financial triumph of Shrek 2 reshaped the way studios viewed animated sequels. Before its release, sequels were often seen as risky in animation with a tendency to go direct to video. After Shrek 2, studios realized that with the right creative and marketing push, animated sequels could be as profitable or more profitable than original films. It also cemented DreamWorks as a serious rival to Disney and Pixar, proving that their irreverent pop culture-heavy style could dominate both critical reception and commercial performance. The success paved the way for Shrek the Third, Shrek Forever After, and the Puss in Boots spin-offs, as well as influencing the studio's future franchises. In financial terms, Shrek 2 wasn't just a hit. It was a phenomenon. It turned a $150 million production into nearly a billion-dollar empire, reshaping animation economics and leaving a blueprint for how to make a sequel that dominates at the box office while still earning its place in the hearts of audiences. Interesting facts behind the curtain of Shrek 2. The magic of Shrek 2 didn't just happen in the final cut. It was built through years of quirky discoveries, unexpected creative choices, and behind-the-scenes stories that reveal just how much thought and spontaneity went into making one of the most successful animated films of all time. Some of these moments were carefully planned. Others were happy accidents. Together, they add another layer of appreciation for the film's humor, creativity, and cultural footprint. 1. Puss in Boots was nearly a minor character. When early drafts of Shrek 2 introduced Puss in Boots, he was originally intended as a short-lived antagonist hired to take down Shrek. However, Antonio Banderas' audition was so charismatic and his comedic chemistry with the returning cast so natural that the character was quickly rewritten as a major supporting player. Not only did this change elevate Shrek 2's humor, but it also laid the foundation for a spin-off franchise nearly a decade later. 2. Eddie Murphy's improv made it into the final cut. Eddie Murphy's recording sessions for Donkey were famously unpredictable. Murphy often veered off script, delivering long stretches of improvised dialogue that the directors would later animate around. In fact, some of Donkey's funniest lines, such as his rambling complaints during the far, far away journey, weren't in the original screenplay at all. The animators even extended shots mid-production to fit his unexpected energy. 3. The Fairy. Godmother's voice actor did her own singing. Jennifer Saunders wasn't just the voice of the fairy godmother, she also performed her own songs. Producers initially considered using a separate professional singer, but Saunders insisted on delivering both the acting and singing performances herself. Her powerhouse rendition of Holding Out for a Hero became one of the most iconic animated musical numbers ever, blending genuine vocal talent with character-driven theatricality. 4. Far, Far Away's design was a love letter to Beverly Hills, the glittering kingdom. Far, Far Away wasn't purely a fairy tale invention. It was modeled after Beverly Hills and Hollywood. The animators studied the city's palm-lined streets, upscale shopping districts, and luxury mansions, then merged them with medieval and Renaissance architecture. Even the city's famous Far, Far Away sign was a parody of the Hollywood sign, strategically placed on a hill to dominate the skyline. 5. The dinner scene took months to animate. The awkward escalating dinner confrontation between Shrek, Fiona, and her parents is one of the film's comedic highlights. It also proved to be one of the most technically challenging sequences to animate. Multiple characters had to speak over one another while maintaining believable eye lines, gestures, and comedic timing. The overlapping dialogue required tight coordination between voice actors, animators, and editors, with the final version taking over 4 months to complete from blocking to final render. 6. Puss in Boots' big-eyed look was inspired by real cats. That infamous cute eyes moment wasn't purely a product of animator imagination. It came from reference footage of real cats, turning their pupils wide to appear more innocent. The animators exaggerated the effect, giving Puss impossibly large, shimmering eyes framed by tiny, trembling whiskers. This visual gag became one of the most parody-eyed and meme-worthy images in animation history. 7. Shrek's human look was based on Mike Myers. When Shrek drinks the happily ever after potion and transforms into a human, his facial structure subtly resembles Mike Myers. Animators intentionally blended Shrek's existing features with Mears's real-life proportions, creating a familiar yet uncanny version of the character that fans still debate over. 8. Mongo's roar came from an unlikely source. The sound team needed a distinctive voice for the giant gingerbread man. Instead of designing it purely, digitally, they combined the voice of a human actor shouting into a giant plastic bucket with slowed-down lime, growls and deepened baking sheet clangs. The result was a sound that was simultaneously cartoonish and intimidating. 9. The pop culture references went deeper than you think. While the obvious nods like Starbucks, coffee instead of Starbucks are easy to spot, the film hides dozens of blink, and you miss it. Parodies, storefronts, reference real-world fashion brands with fairy tale twists and background extras often mimic celebrities' mannerisms. Even the transformation sequence contains visual homages to Beauty and the Beast and the Wizard of Oz. 10. The film's success was so massive, it shifted studio strategy. The critical and financial triumph of Shrek 2 didn't just guarantee more sequels. It reshaped DreamWorks' production approach. After its release, the studio leaned harder into franchise building, spin-offs, and star-studded casts, realizing that audiences responded strongly to a mix of humor, heart, and celebrity-driven marketing. 11. Test screenings changed a key ending moment. In early versions of the finale, Fiona briefly considered staying in her human form before deciding to be an ogre again. Test. Audiences reacted negatively, feeling it undercut the message of self-acceptance. The ending was reworked so that Fiona's choice was firm and immediate, giving the film a stronger thematic punch. Shrek 2's behind-the-scenes stories prove that even the most polished billion-dollar productions are built on experimentation, improvisation, and unexpected inspiration. These small details, whether born from an actor's ad-lib, an animator's personal cat, or a sound designer's bucket experiment, are what give the film its unique flavor. They're also why Shrek 2 remains more than just a blockbuster. It's a creative landmark whose making was as lively and unpredictable as the movie itself. Audience reception and critical acclaim, the crown jewel of animated sequels. When Shrek 2 hit theaters in May 2004, it didn't just draw crowds, it ignited a cultural wave. Audiences across all age groups embraced the film with an enthusiasm rarely seen for animated sequels, while critics hailed it as a rare follow-up that not only matched, but in many ways surpassed its predecessor. The result was a perfect storm of mass appeal, glowing reviews, and industry recognition that cemented Shrek 2 as one of the most celebrated animated films of its era. Audience reaction, laughter, love, and repeat viewings. From its opening weekend, Shrek 2 became a family event film. Parents who enjoyed the first Shrek found the sequel even more layered with sharper satire and a more emotional core. Children laughed at the slapstick, talking animals, and colorful visuals, while older viewers caught the sly references to Hollywood celebrity, culture, and classic fairy tales. One of the film's most talked about qualities among general audiences was its rewatch value. Viewers quickly discovered that Shrek 2 was packed with visual gags and background jokes they had missed the first time. This hidden layer effect encouraged repeat cinema visits, which contributed significantly to its box office dominance. In post-release surveys, characters like Puss in Boots and the Fairy Godmother became instant fan favorites. Puss's mix of suave confidence and manipulative cuteness drew applause in theaters, while Jennifer Saunders' powerhouse musical numbers gave the Fairy Godmother a level of charisma rarely seen in animated villains. Critical praise, a sequel that breaks the mold, critics were nearly unanimous in their admiration for Shrek. Number 2. Many reviews noted that where most animated sequels settle for rehashing the original, Shrek 2 expanded the world, deepened the relationships, and delivered a more ambitious visual and comedic scope. Roger Ebert called it bright, cheerful, and loaded with clever in-jokes that both kids and adults can enjoy. While the New York Times praised its razor-sharp parody and warm-hearted storytelling, critics singled out the film's ability to balance broad comedy with genuine emotional beats, particularly in Shrek's journey towards self-acceptance and Fiona's unwavering love for him. The voice cast also earned acclaim. Antonio Banderas was highlighted in multiple reviews for stealing scenes as Puss in Boots, and Eddie Murphy once again drew praise for his relentless comedic energy as Donkey. Jennifer Saunders' Fairy Godmother was often compared to Broadway divas for her mix of vocal power and comedic timing. Award recognition. Critical acclaim meets industry respect. While Shrek 2 didn't win the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature, losing to The Incredibles, it was nominated for the honor and remained a strong contender. Throughout award season, it also earned an Oscar nomination for Best Original Song with Accidentally in Love by Counting Crows, which became a radio hit and received extensive music video play. The film swept the Annie Awards, the animation industry's highest honor, winning in multiple categories for voice, acting, production design, and animation. It also picked up accolades from the BAFTA Awards, the Critics' Choice Awards, and numerous critics associations. Cultural impact. From meme culture to legacy status, one of Shrek 2's most enduring achievements is its staying power in popular culture. Puss in Boots' Big Eyes moment became a viral image long before memes dominated the internet. The Fairy Godmother's holding out for a hero performance has since been remixed, covered, and referenced in everything from TV shows to live stage performances. The film also fueled a surge of merchandise sales and fan art, expanding its audience well beyond traditional moviegoers. Over the years, Shrek 2 has developed a secondary life in internet culture, where its humor and visuals are frequently reinterpreted in ironic and nostalgic ways, ensuring its relevance with younger generations who weren't even born when it was released. Or why the reception matters. The overwhelmingly positive audience and critical response to Shrek 2 had a profound effect on DreamWorks Animation. It proved that their formula, satirical wit, celebrity, voice talent, and cross-generational appeal could stand toe-to-toe with Pixar's more traditionally heartfelt approach. The film's success gave DreamWorks the confidence to expand the Shrek franchise into multiple sequels, spin-offs, and holiday specials, while also pushing other studios to aim higher with animated follow-ups. In the end, Shrek 2 was more than just a box office giant. It was a film that united audiences and critics in agreement that sequels could be as fresh, bold, and emotionally resonant as the originals. Its combination of humor, heart, and technical excellence earned it a place not only in animation history, but also in the cultural memory of millions who still quote its lines, sing its songs, and smile at the sight of an ogre who found his happily ever after without losing himself in the process. Final review and cinematic verdict. Why Shrek 2 still reigns. Supreme Shrek 2 isn't just a sequel, it's a masterclass in how to expand a beloved world without losing the magic that made it special in the first place. Where most follow-ups stumble into repetition or spectacle over substance, this film strikes an almost perfect balance, delivering sharper humor, richer visuals, and deeper emotional resonance, while introducing unforgettable new characters who feel instantly essential to the franchise. Narrative strength, bigger but still personal. At its heart, Shrek 2 is a story about acceptance, accepting yourself, your partner, and the messy, unpolished realities of love. The film takes Shrek and Fiona's relationship into the realm of real-world emotional challenges by placing them in the universal yet hilariously absurd situation of meeting the in-laws. This setting allows for both broad comedy and grounded emotional beats, particularly in Shrek's internal struggle over whether he's good enough for Fiona's royal family. The clever decision to center the story on family conflict rather than a simple rescue mission gives the film more thematic weight. Far, Far Away becomes not just a glittering fairy tale city, but a metaphor for societal expectations, beauty standards, and the pressure to fit in. Character excellence, an ensemble that shines. Shrek, Fiona, and Donkey return with the same lovable quirks. But it's the newcomers who elevate the sequel into something extraordinary. Puss in Boots steals scenes with his mix of Zoroiki bravado and shameless manipulation, while Diaz, fairy godmother, emerges as one of animation's most charismatic villains, equal parts glamorous diva and ruthless corporate strategist. What's remarkable is that every major character, old and new, gets at least one standout moment. Donkey's snappy banter, Puss's adorable cute eyes trick, Fiona's unwavering loyalty, and Shrek's quiet moments of vulnerability all play into a tapestry of memorable performances. This isn't a film where anyone gets sidelined. The ensemble carries equal weight. Technical achievement, animation meets cinematic craft. Technically, Shrek 2 was a leap forward from its predecessor. Improved rendering allowed for more expressive facial animation, richer textures, and environments bursting with detail. The cinematography feels more like a live-action blockbuster than a typical animated film with sweeping camera moves, dramatic lighting, and carefully choreographed action sequences. The castle siege remains one of the most ambitious animated set pieces of its time, combining scale, humor, music, and visual effects in a way that's both thrilling and absurd. It's a sequence that could easily have become chaotic, yet it's executed with precision and clarity. Musical brilliance, soundtrack, as storytelling. Few animated films integrate music as organically as Shrek 2. From the bittersweet changes during the transformation montage to the electrifying holding out for a hero finale, the soundtrack doesn't just accompany the story, it drives it. Jennifer Saunders' live-sung villain number is a perfect example of how music can elevate narrative stakes, making the climax feel like both a fairy tale epic and a full-blown rock opera. Harry Gregson Williams' score fills the spaces between the pop tracks, giving emotional moments room to breathe and comedic moments a playful bounce. The balance between licensed music and original scoring is one of the film's unsung achievements. Humor and emotional resonance, laughs with lasting impact. The humor works on multiple levels. Slapstick for kids, pop culture satire for adults, and background sight gags for the observant. The result is a film that's endlessly rewatchable. There's always a joke you missed the first time, but crucially, the comedy never undercuts the emotional core. Shrek's arc from insecurity to self-acceptance, Fiona's loyalty in the face of temptation, and even Harold's redemption as a fatherland with sincerity. This emotional honesty is why Shrek 2 connects as strongly today as it did 2 decades ago. It understands that parody without heart is hollow, and heart without humor can feel heavy-handed. Cultural and industry legacy, the gold standard of animated sequels. In the years since its release, Shrek 2 has maintained its status as one of the greatest animated sequels ever made. It shattered box office records, influenced how studios approached franchise building, and embedded itself in pop culture through quotes, memes, and musical moments. Puss in Boots' popularity even spun off into his own films, keeping the Shrek universe alive long after the main series slowed. More importantly, Shrek 2 proved that animated sequels could carry just as much creative weight as their predecessors, if not more. It became the benchmark against which all other animated follow-ups are measured. Cinematic verdict. Shrek 2 is a near-perfect blend of technical artistry, clever writing, and heartfelt storytelling. It expands its world without losing its soul, introduces characters who feel instantly iconic, and delivers set pieces that remain unmatched in ambition and charm. Whether you're laughing at Donkey's rambling, holding your breath during the castle siege, or getting goosebumps from holding out for a hero, you're experiencing a film that works on every level. Verdict: Shrek 2 isn't just a great sequel. It's one of the finest animated films ever made. Its humor is timeless, its heart is genuine, and its craft is impeccable. 2 decades later, it still wears the crown it earned in 2004, and it doesn't look ready to give it up anytime soon. Technical department. The craftsmanship behind Shrek 2. When Shrek 2 arrived in 2004, it wasn't just another animated sequel. It was a technical statement. DreamWorks Animation, riding high from the success of the first Shrek, knew they had to push the envelope in every department: animation detail, lighting, visual, design, editing precision, and sound engineering. The result was a film that not only matched but surpassed its predecessor in visual richness and production sophistication, cementing its place among the most technically accomplished animated films of its time. Animation evolution from swamp to splendor. The leap in animation quality between Shrek 2001 and Shrek 2 is immediately visible. Advances in DreamWorks' proprietary animation software allowed for smoother character movements, more intricate facial expressions, and better integration of secondary elements like clothing and hair. In Shrek, human characters often carried a slight stiffness. In Shrek 2, motion was fluid, nuanced, and character-specific. For instance, Fiona's walk shifts subtly when she's in human form, compared to ogre form, reflecting changes in balance and poise. Crowd scenes in Far, Far Away were also a breakthrough. Thanks to refined crowd simulation systems, the animators could populate bustling streets and royal gatherings with individualized background characters, each moving with their own rhythm rather than looping. Animations, lighting, and cinematography building Far Away. The technical team treated Far, Far Away as a living, breathing city, a hybrid of fairy tale opulence and Beverly Hills glamour. Lighting was a huge part of this. Illusion. Sunlight in the city scenes is warmer and more golden, reflecting the polished, superficial nature of the royal environment, while scenes in Shrek's swamp retain the cool, earthy palette of the first film. Cinematography in Shrek 2 also took a more cinematic approach, borrowing techniques from live-action filmmaking. Camera pans, dolly zooms, and depth of field focus shifts create a sense of scale and drama, particularly in action. Set pieces like the giant gingerbread man siege on the castle, character design and texturing layers beyond the onion-improved rendering technology allowed for richer surface detail across characters. Ogre skin, for example, had subtle pore textures and variation in hue that made Shrek and Fiona feel more tactile. The transformation sequences, from ogre to human and vice versa, were meticulously layered with transitional morphing hair, physics adjustments, and lighting shifts to maintain believability. Costume textures were also upgraded. The fairy godmother's gown shimmered with micro-animated glitter maps, while Pussing and Boots' feathered hat used dynamic simulation to sway realistically with his movement. These design choices reinforced character identity through wardrobe alone. Editing and comedic timing, comedy and animation, lives or dies by timing. The editorial team for Shrek 2 mastered the art of rhythm. Rapid cuts during comedic banter contrasted with lingering pauses for reaction shots. Donkey's sarcastic quips often landed because the edit left just enough space after a joke for the audience to process before moving on. Action sequences, such as the holding out for a hero climax, were paced like a music video, cutting in sync with the beat while maintaining clarity of spatial geography, a challenging feat in animation. Sound design, building a world beyond the screen. Skywalker sound returned to craft the audio landscape, layering environmental sounds that grounded the fantasy and realism. The clink of armor, the rustle of silk gowns, the squelch of mud in Shrek's swamp, all were individually recorded and mixed to avoid cartoonish overstatement. The transformation scenes employed complex sound layering, a blend of magical chimes, low rumbles, and subtle body movement effects to sell the physicality of the change. Puss in Boots' swordplay was heightened with crisp, metallic ringtones, while the gingerbread man's movements were accompanied by delicate cookie crumb crackles, making him feel both edible and formidable. Music integration, technical and narrative fusion. Harry Gregson Williams' score wasn't just composed, it was engineered to mesh seamlessly with both dialogue and pop soundtrack inserts, or mixing pop songs. Like changes and holding out for a hero into the film's soundscape required precise audio balancing to maintain immersion. The music often shifts dynamically with scene tone, blending orchestral motifs into existing pop structures without abrupt transitions, visual effects, and large-scale moments. Perhaps the most technically impressive set piece is the storming of the castle with the giant gingerbread man. This sequence involved large-scale water, simulation for the moat, particle effects for splashes and debris, and dynamic destruction physics as interacts with the castle. These effects had to remain consistent with the stylized look of the film while still conveying weight and danger. Magic effects, particularly those used by the fairy godmother, combined glowing particle swirls with volumetric light beams. These sequences required careful compositing to ensure the brightness didn't overwhelm surrounding visuals, maintaining readability in fast-moving shots. The seamless blend. What makes Shrek 2's technical work stand out is that no single element overpowers the others. Animation, lighting, sound, and editing flow together in service of the story and humor. The technical department's success lies in making these advancements invisible to the casual viewer. The audience is too busy laughing or gasping to consciously note the engineering behind the scenes. DreamWorks didn't just produce a sequel. They used Shrek 2 as a platform to experiment, refine, and ultimately elevate what computer animation could achieve in 2004. It's a testament to the film's craftsmanship that 2 decades later, it still holds up visually and technically, standing as one of the most polished productions in the studio's history. Filming, bringing Shrek 2 to life in the world of animation. Filming is a different beast than in live action, but it's no less demanding. For Shrek 2, the process was a marathon of creativity, precision, and collaboration across multiple departments: voice acting, animation blocking, camera, choreography, lighting, and visual effects, each working in tandem to turn a stack of storyboards into a living, breathing film. From the first microphone check to the final animation render, the production phase was a carefully orchestrated dance lasting nearly 2 years, voice recording laying the emotional foundation. The first step in Shrek 2's filming process began in the sound booth. Unlike live-action films, where visuals lead performance, here the voices came first. The returning cast, Mike Mears, Shrek, Eddie Murphy, Donkey, and Cameron Diaz Fiona, were recorded months before animators began their work, allowing animators to sync lip movements, facial expressions, and body language to the performances. Directors Andrew Adamson, Kelly Asbury, and Conrad Vernon encouraged improvisation during recording sessions. Eddie Murphy's Donkey benefited most from this freedom. Many of his rapid-fire jokes were improvised, and animators later extended certain shots to fit his unexpected delivery. Mike Myers, continuing Shrek's signature Scottish accent, leaned into subtler line readings this time, which animators translated into more nuanced expressions and smaller gestures. Shrek's raised eyebrow or reluctant smirk became key visual beats. Jennifer Saunders recorded much of her fairy godmother performance, standing and gesturing dramatically. So, her physicality informed her character's sweeping arm movements and flamboyant posture. Antonio Banderas, voicing Puss in Boots, alternated between suave, deep delivery and exaggerated, cute kitten voice in a single take. Animators mirrored this by giving Puss sudden, comically jarring shifts in facial expression, animation blocking, and character acting. Once the voice tracks were locked, animation blocking began. This stage is the rough, low details, staging of each scene, focusing on character positions, timing, and camera moves. Animators treated the characters as actors on a digital set, finding the most expressive body language to match the recorded dialogue. Physical comedy was carefully rehearsed in this digital blocking phase. For instance, in the dinner scene where Shrek and King Harold argue, animators blocked exaggerated utensil gestures, table slams, and awkward silences to hit comedic beats. Animators also studied live-action reference footage, some recorded by themselves, acting out scenes to ensure believable weight, timing, and comedic rhythm, cinematography, and animation, digital cameras with live action. Thinking. Though the world of Shrek 2 was built inside computers, the camera work was approached as if it were a live-action set. Virtual cameras could pan, dolly, and crane smoothly, but the directors often chose framing and angles that mimicked live cinematography for a more cinematic feel. Farway's sweeping establishing shots were designed to feel like grand aerial helicopter passes, complete with slight camera drift to suggest human-operated equipment. In contrast, action scenes like Mongo's march toward the castle used low angles and forward tracking, shots to emphasize his size and momentum. These camera decisions made Shrek 2 feel less like a cartoon and more like a big-budget spectacle, performance animation, translating emotion into pixels. DreamWorks. Animators pushed character acting further than in the first film. Thanks to advancements in facial rigging, characters could display subtle micro-expressions. Fiona's eyes could flicker with doubt, Shrek's mouth could hesitate before a confession, and Donkey's ears could twitch nervously. In emotionally heavy moments, such as Shrek overhearing, Fiona with charming animators used minimal movement. Shrek's shoulders slump, his eyelids lower, allowing the audience to focus on the voice performance and the weight of the scene. In comedic beats, movement became broad. and snappy, such as Pussy's exaggerated sword flourishes or Donkey's high-energy hops. Set and environmental animation. Filming wasn't just about characters. Far, Far Away was essentially another character in the film, and its creation required extensive environmental animation. Streets bustled with fairy tale citizens, each animated with unique gaits, gestures, and interactions, even if they were in the background. This was made possible by crowd simulation software, but animators still hand-tweaked certain extras to add sight gags, a hallmark of the Shrek style. Large-scale sequences like the Transformation Potion Storm and the final castle siege involved complex environmental effects, swirling clouds, magical light bursts, splashing water, collapsing stone and debris scattering in real time, action set pieces pre-visualization to final render. The holding out for a hero rescue sequence is a prime example of Shrek 2's ambitious animation filming. The scene was pre-visualized months in advance with music tempo dictating camera cuts and action beats. Animators treated the giant gingerbread man as a massive physical prop. His weight was conveyed through slower, heavy steps, while water interaction required advanced splash simulation. In the same sequence, Donkey's frantic ride and Shrek's sword fight were animated separately, then composited into the final cut. Each action strand had to match the music's rhythm and the scene's intercut tension, lighting and rendering the cinematic polish once animation was approved. Lighting artists staged every scene with digital lights simulating sunlight, candlelight, or magical glow as needed. Far, Far Away's sunlit streets glowed with warm tones, while Shrek Swamp retained its cooler natural hues for contrast. Rendering was the last step in filming, turning all that animation, lighting, and texture work into final images. Some shots took up to 40 hours of processing per frame due to complex effects like reflective surfaces, particle systems, and high-resolution textures set atmosphere in production. While animation isn't filmed on physical sets, the production atmosphere mirrored live-action filmmaking in one key way. Collaboration, directors, animators, sound designers, and effects artists constantly reviewed shots together, refining details in iterative passes. Changes could be as small as adjusting the timing of a blink, or as large as reblocking an entire scene for better comedic payoff. By the end of production, Shrek 2 had been filmed through a marriage of vocal performance, digital acting, camera craftsmanship, and environmental world-building. This phase wasn't just about bringing the script to life. It was about infusing every frame with the same charm, energy, and layered humor that defined the Shrek universe, ensuring that the sequel didn't just match the first films and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting. And if you like this video, please like it, share it. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.